Okay, John, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. We're excited to have you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, no problem. Let's dive right into it so that our listeners have a good understanding. What first got you into recruiting?
Oh, I mean, you know this because you've interviewed other recruiters. Nobody
Yeah.
grows up wanting to be a recruiter. You kind of fall into it, right?
Yeah.
And my story is not any different. I got we what did we call it? I wasn't actually recruited to be a recruiter. Let me rephrase that. They didn't tell me that's what they were recruiting me for. They
Okay.
gave me the guys that I was coming in to interview for like a sales job with one of their clients, and then they, interviewed me and kind of moved me into this recruiting thing that I had never heard about. So
Mhm.
at the time, I was not familiar with recruiting at all. But we started with Management Recruiters of Sacramento, part of the MRI network. At the time when I started, they already had, almost 30 years of experience in executive search. So I
Mhm.
was blessed to start in a very good established company with amazing training. But like everybody, I just kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It is a common thing, right? I mean, a lot of people say I've had a couple people say, my parents did it, or my dad did it, and so I knew I wanted to do it, but the majority of the time it's not the case.
Over the years, I've had one or two people in an interview go, "Oh my God, I've always wanted to be a recruiter." And I'm like, you're a liar. Nobody ever grew up saying, "Oh my God, I want to be a recruiter when I grow up."
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
That is funny. And tell us here, who's your typical client and your typical candidate, just so that the
Yeah.
listeners have an idea.
So everything we do, we end up being pretty niched in kind of the renewables market,
Hmm.
which is expanding a little bit into more utility infrastructure.
Okay.
But for the most part, our clients are either manufacturers of energy technology, so think solar modules, inverters, energy storage products, or services around that,
Hmm.
or companies that are developing projects utilizing those technologies. So large power plant developers, large energy construction companies, and a handful of software and kind of engineering services firms around that ecosystem. In terms of candidates, we tend to go relatively deep within a somewhat narrow section of the market. So we
Hmm.
will place from CEOs, CFO, VP finance, VP engineering, and in some cases we'll even get down all the way to like field service techs for certain jobs within certain organizations. So it's pretty wide.
Yeah. I've heard, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I know it's different for every industry and every recruiting firm, the way that you look at it, but I've
Yeah.
heard when you get a certain client, a certain niche, sometimes it's nicer because you can go deeper, you can place different positions because you have one client that you fill multiple roles for, and it ends up being better for your company.
It's an ongoing kind of debate about what is better. To some degree, if you were to say, "Hey, all I do is place vice presidents of engineering within energy storage companies," you can recycle that same candidate pool, and you've got a lot of leverage there.
Hmm.
But you have to be in a market where there's enough demand for those roles on a regular basis. So,
Right.
I know folks that place like accountants all day long, and they own that market in a specific region, and there's a lot of power to that. But it's
Yeah.
also I find it incredibly gratifying to get to know an organization from top to bottom and to have placed, there's a couple of companies where we placed 40, 50 people within that company.
Mhm.
And to have that big of an impact in an organization, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure it's rewarding too. I mean, with
Absolutely.
placing that many people and helping them find jobs. I've had a lot of people mention it's a really nice benefit of recruiting. Obviously, you got to do it for the money, right? But
Oh, wait, they pay
it's
us to do
really,
this?
yeah. What? Who knew, right?
Oh yeah. No, but and you can tell relatively quickly who's just trying to chase money and who actually cares about the organizations and the individuals they're working with.
Yeah.
Because hey, you hear about the fees and some of the revenue that some recruiters generate, and it's impressive. But I would say that most of the time, the individuals that we see that are primarily financially driven tend to burn out quickly. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, there is nothing better than walking into an organization. We don't actually walk in very often, but you get on the call and they're like,
Right.
"Oh, it's John," right? Because they didn't know that the VP already knew you or something like that. It's just a ton of fun.
Right. Right. That's awesome. That is awesome. And I'm curious, what changes, kind of switching gears, but what changes are you seeing right now in how companies approach leadership and talent?
Oh, that is a very broad question. I'm sure it's broad intentionally.
Yeah.
The market's shifted a lot over the last 12 months.
Hmm.
Um, I think if you looked at the most recent, well, actually, the jobs report today came out for March. That was not came out today in March for February, and it was not good. And I think if you look back over the last 12 months, we have, well, since April of last year, the number of newly created jobs, I believe, is a net negative, right? Or very close to it. So we have not been in a growth mode from a hiring perspective in terms of total new jobs in a while. And
Hmm.
and so and even there have been good months and bad months, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds on the numbers, but bottom line, um, companies are getting more selective, right? Every hire matters, and they're getting incredibly picky. And so what we're seeing is that they're looking for perfect, and they're looking for people that really can make an impact and move the needle. And it's also taking a little bit longer to go through that process because we're finding that, where maybe we used to find three or four really good candidates for a given role, now we're finding eight or 10 where they're like, wow, any of these people could be amazing. And so the due diligence period is taking a little bit longer. The decision-making process is taking a little bit longer. And they have a little bit better options and they're being more picky.
Yeah. I feel like this sounds, to me, this makes sense. I used to do pre-med study in my undergrad a while ago, but it was talking about, I had a psychological principle of tyranny of choice. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Where,
Yeah.
you have too many options. Are you finding that with your clients? Like, you're like, these too many good
Absolutely.
options.
Absolutely. And I think that's true for everybody in every space, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we live in a world where options are almost endless, right? I mean, at
Mhm.
ChatGPT, you have the access to any information, endless anything at the tip of your fingers, Amazon Prime, all of it. And
Mhm.
and so I think organizations frequently they don't want to have more options or more choices, but they want to be more confident in the choice that they're making. And
Yeah.
so when you're looking to be more confident in making a decision, you frequently will think, well, maybe if I just talk to two more people, then I'll be a little more confident about this, right? But it doesn't necessarily work that way. So I
Mhm.
think one of the areas that we truly try to help is a lot of times when an organization decides, hey, we need to hire a new VP of engineering, um, the the methodology behind it or the thought process is that either somebody left and we have to backfill them, or we're running into bottlenecks, we're having issues, stuff's fallen by the wayside, timelines are slipping, and so you go, okay, we need a new VP. Well, let's grab the job description we used last time, and maybe we'll update a few things, and let's go see what's out there. And a much better methodology to that would be, okay, if we're going to hire this new VP, what do they need to be able to accomplish in 90 days? Do we need to replace two of our least performing engineers, bring in two other people? Are there milestones that need to be hit with projects that are in pipeline? Is it a certain amount of uh, speed we need to increase our design process? And I think a lot of organizations don't take a step back because everybody's so busy, right? To really think down methodically, what are the actual objectives that this person has to be able to solve for us? And if we can set that and be very, very intentional and clear about it, it makes that decision-making process way easier to be able to interview these people and ask them, tell me about a time that you went through a change management structure within your engineering team. Tell me about a time that, you had to double the throughput for design work on utility scale energy projects. And
Mhm.
if you can be that specific about what you need, it enables you to be way more specific in your decision-making process on how you evaluate candidates.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, my wife would attest to that with us buying a home recently. We just signed on a house, and if you don't know what you're
Congratulations
looking
or
for, thank
condolences.
you. Thank you. Yeah, and condolences at the same time, right? It's
Yeah.
a happy medium there, but it's the same thing. I mean, if you don't know what you're looking for, you could look at 20 different homes and you're just lost, right? You're like, well, that's got nice stuff, that's got nice stuff, and I'm sure you see that with clients all the time. They're like, this guy's really good at this girl's really good at this, but at the end of the day, if you're able to take a step back and actually know exactly what you're looking for, what you need, not just a random job description, I'm sure it makes the
Yeah.
decision making way easier.
We actually use the home buying analogy a lot because it's very similar, right? At the end of the
Huh?
day, we're brokers, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm here to facilitate a process. I'm not in charge of the hiring. I can't make someone take your job, just like
Mhm.
your real estate agent can't do any of that when it comes to a house. And at the
Yeah.
same time, you may have looked at a house that was the first house you looked at that was great. You said, hey, this has a lot of things. Let's see what else is out there. You spend 2 more weeks looking at other houses, and then your wife or husband says like, "Hey,
Right.
that's the one we got to go back. Now it's gone. Somebody else bought it." And
Yep.
the same thing happens with candidates, right? And on the flip side, we see candidates do it as well. That job looks great, but I've got this other thing I just got an interview on, and then a week later, you know what? That wasn't the one. Is that job still there? Can I go back? No, that's gone now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that when we have this perception of unlimited choice, we frequently don't understand that it actually is scarce for really good people, and somebody else is going to come and grab them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I've got a executive coach or life coach, career coach. He does
Yeah,
both of it for me, and he talks about making decisions in neutral rather than in drive or reverse. Like a lot of people make decisions when they're freaking out and backpedaling.
yeah,
Other people make decisions like companies make where they're like, "We're growing so fast, we just got to hire this guy and this guy and this guy." And they don't know what they're looking for, and I feel like that's a really good way to. I mean, I could be wrong, but a really good way to kind of put what we've been talking about so far is, hey, if you know what you're looking for and you're able to kind of take a step back, see what you need, and then when you attack it, it's a really clean decision. I mean, when my wife and I, when we first started looking, we had no idea what we wanted. We just said we want a home, our family's growing, we need a bigger
yeah,
place, right? And then we went and we're like, this is awful. That was a terrible place. And we're like, well, our real estate agent had no idea what he was getting, right? He
yeah.
was like, price range, this is in the price range. And we're like, oh, awful. And then we got a list and then we found something that fit everything, right?
And sometimes you don't know what you're looking for yet. And so sometimes you do have to go through one or two interviews. If it's, if you don't know what you're looking for, you never bought a house before, you're new to the process. If you're adding a brand new role to your organization, you may not have it totally dialed in. But after you have one or two conversations or talk, it's time to get a little more sophisticated in how you're going about that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And I'm curious, I'm going to switch gears on you a little. We've talked about the client a little bit, talking about
Yeah.
the candidate. What's the most common mistake you're seeing executives make in the interview process?
Gosh, it's a good question.
And that could be with you or with the client themselves. Either
Yeah,
one.
absolutely. I think one of the things that we run into, well, our position in the market is sometimes unique because when clients are hiring us, they want like that perfect hand in glove fit, someone who's been there and done that. But what I do see broadly is folks that don't have the ability to clearly articulate their story and kind of their value proposition and what they're bringing to the table.
Hmm.
Um, which sometimes is an after effect of the company not being clear about what problems they need solved.
Right.
But generally speaking, at an executive level, depending on what function you're in, you should have a pretty good idea of what the business problems are that this organization likely needs to be able to solve, right? If you're coming in at the VP of procurement, we need to figure out how to diversify the supply chain, make sure stuff's getting here on time, and decrease costs. So
Mhm.
tell me how you've done that. Tell me what you would do here. What questions do you need to ask to understand how you can move the needle for this organization? And I think a lot of times people, they spend a lot of time talking about, we all like talking about ourselves. So we talk about our experience and our background, and we get into this really long story without really describing how that makes an impact for the organization that you're interviewing with. And so getting to
Yeah.
that next step of really drawing it out, I think is where a lot of folks miss the mark.
Yeah. Honestly, you see it happen just in regular conversations, right?
Oh,
I mean,
all the
a
time.
lot of people don't realize, a lot of people are listening to see how it relates to them. And so
Yeah,
with interviews, I'm sure a lot of executives would be good for them to know before they go. And I know I've got a client that's going in an interview on Wednesday, right?
yeah,
And, if they know, yeah, I should relate it to the person I'm talking to because most people won't take it, synthesize it, think about, how it relates to them and their company. Most people will be like, okay,
yeah.
that's good to know. Let me think about it. And then somebody that does say it, they get the job,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, organizations should be hiring someone to solve a specific set of problems, right?
Mhm.
And so the person that can articulate how they've done something similar in the past and how they can do it for you
Mhm.
should be a step above other individuals.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I appreciate that insight. And I'm gonna ask you a different question. I'm gonna read this one just to make sure that I ask it correctly. But
Okay.
from your perspective as as a recruiter deeply embedded in this space, right? You've got a lot of experience there. What does a first strong conversation with a candidate look like to you? And what should executives do more of when they're starting that first conversation with you or other recruiters?
Yeah. And I do think that this might be a little bit different when you're talking to a recruiter like me compared to a first conversation within an organization.
Hmm.
Um, I tend to be a little more conversational and a little less structured in those first meetings. And we
Yeah.
certainly have questions we want to go through and stuff we want to cover with everybody, but I do want to get a sense of who you are as a person and what drives you, as opposed to just what did you do. I mean this the stuff on your resume and tell me about the impact you made and what did you do here and there. That stuff is kind of the table stakes of a conversation to be able to decide if you're somebody that we can really present to a client or not. But understanding that I was taught very early on doing this as a career, it's not the what, it's the why. So yeah,
Mm.
it's fantastic that you increased revenue, but tell me more about how you did it. And why are you built in a way that you're able to do this? What motivates you? What's that drive?
Mm.
You hear all kinds of different answers to that. A lot of people don't have an answer for it, but
Yeah.
when you can get to hear somebody's story a little bit and really understand who they are and what drives them, I think it makes a pretty big difference.
Yeah. I like that. I like diving into the why. Again, kind of relating back to my coach when we talk about different goals we have for our business and for our company, right? If you
Yeah.
know the why, you're able to
Yeah.
actually do some more with it.
Absolutely. I mean, and different as a business owner, but we all think that yeah, we need to grow revenue. We need more. We need to generate more. And why? What does it do for you? Is more revenue always the answer if it increase your costs? Probably not, right?
Right.
Is it profitable revenue? And I place a lot of salespeople, and so when I talk with sales leaders and we hear about top line revenue growth. Hey, that's
Hmm.
wonderful. So tell me more about that. Oh, well, we really take a customer first approach. And great. So what did that mean for the business? Oh, well, because you found out that, they were pushing revenue at the cost of margin, and that happens in the renewable space. It's a very cost competitive market, but that's not a
Right.
long-term sustainable strategy. Now, where
Huh.
you guys were going public, and so that was what you had to do, and you were okay to take a loss temporarily, fine. But you've done it at 5 companies, and 3 of those have gone bankrupt now. That's a red flag,
Right.
right? Now I
Right.
need to have some caution flags on the field about are you a fit for this particular company? And there might be some companies that's great for, but there's others
Yeah.
that's just not it's not going to be the right fit. And that's okay.
Mm. That's an interesting viewpoint, right? Because most people, I think, do get kind of lost in the numbers. I'm not saying most recruiters, but just most people when they're looking at a resume, I was looking at one today, great numbers. But I like that you're diving in and talking about the nitty-gritties of, hey, this might be good, it might be bad, right? And it's good for you to know for your client because you're putting your neck out. I,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And we all know the stories where somebody maybe was at a job that didn't work out for a little while, so they leave. And again, it's not necessarily you've had a couple of moves in your career because we all know that people aren't staying in jobs for 20 years anymore. But
yeah,
what was really going on there? And like what's is there a pattern that we're seeing where, every 18 months you're leaving and it's the product market fit wasn't good or my boss was challenging or what's going on there, right?
yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting. And I'm curious, this is related to, I guess, the resume and in general, but with skill sets. What leadership skill sets are you seeing? Are you seeing any that are changing or becoming more valuable in a pretty dynamic market right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. I think adaptability is the number
Mhm.
one thing that everybody needs. And it's not just for executives, right? I mean, all of us are going through this very changing environment. And I was talking to the owner of a engineering services firm yesterday,
Mhm.
and he was telling me about, how AI has changed their workflow so dramatically in the last 2 weeks that, this next senior engineer that they're going to, engineering leader they're bringing in. He's like, we need someone that is not only willing to work with AI, but is going to embrace it and help us incorporate it across this organization and figure out where does it make sense to take the workload off. Not because we're looking to replace employees, but now instead of our engineers having to work 10-hour days, they're working 8-hour days and they're able to get home to dinner with their family and everybody's happier. And
Yeah.
so every company has to figure out what works for them, but uh, people that have the ability to adapt, especially in our world, we're dealing with enormous disruptions to supply chains. We've got tariffs that are up and down and back and forth, and
Right.
fiat restrictions for foreign entities are concerned where the solar modules come from. And so, I mean, the world is changing in some cases day to day based on what your supply chain is and what that means for your project economics. So that adaptability piece, I think, is one of the biggest drivers for hires.
Mm. I really like that. I say that a lot. I mean, I've liked a lot of what you said today. Don't get me wrong, but I really enjoy thinking about that because it can be very versatile. Being adaptable can really help relate in just about any industry. All of our clients, a lot of them are in different industries, different areas. That's very applicable for most people, right?
Yep.
Everybody looking in
Yeah.
the market. So I like that. Thank you for sharing.
But it's also hard to define, right? It's one of those things, as
Right.
much as I just said everything about we need to have core objectives and how do you define these things in an interview process, adaptability is a little bit squishy for sure. So,
Yeah.
how do you tell that story about how you've had to go through changes and what you've done? And it's a story time kind of an answer, but
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Well, I mean, the way that I would look at applying that, if, for just for listeners, and correct me, please. I will not be offended if you correct me. But the way that I look at it being adaptable is, you know how you're attacking it, how you're going to attack the interview, the job search, right? You're talking to the recruiters, you're talking to the hiring managers,
Yeah.
right? And then you see the pain points, but then you have to be adaptable of what they're actually struggling with, because you could be wrong, right?
Yeah.
You could use ChatGPT and Gemini and do your search online and see what the pain points are, and then you could actually ask them, and it could be a wash, right? All your research could be down the drain, and then you really
ChatGPT
find
would
out.
never be wrong. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking? Well, ChatGPT, it tells me I'm never wrong,
Yeah.
actually. You know,
Oh,
I'm
that's
always
funny.
right to ChatGPT. I've always got great ideas, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Seriously.
love.
Oh man, that's funny.
But yeah, I just think that's a really applicable thing that people can just think about being adaptable when they're going into interviews, going into the job search
Yeah.
for different, especially with titles. I mean, I don't know if you agree, but a lot of people I've heard, hey, I've suggested if you're a little bit more adaptable with title, you actually might find something you enjoy more, you get paid what you're looking for. But if you're just willing to be a little bit more adaptable there, you might find some more success you like.
Yeah, I think everybody has this very linear career path that they feel like they need to go on.
Hmm.
Um, and I love talking about salespeople in particular with this. They go, oh, I want to go become a sales director and a VP of sales, maybe a CRO.
Hmm.
Like, I'm just going to throw it out there to you. If you were the top performing salesperson in most organizations, you're probably making more money than the VP of sales. At least you should be,
Right.
or very damn close to it. And so, are you wanting to do that just because that's like the ego and that's what we feel like we need to be doing? Is there something about leading people and developing people that you find personally rewarding? Because a lot of times, again, if you're just out there crushing it as a sales guy or gal, and I realize that it is a different level of stress and a certain kind of person that has to do that. But I've seen a lot of people move from there to be the VP of sales, and now what are they doing all day? You're dealing with salespeople complaining about stuff, non-performance, and you're managing quotas, you're dealing with board presentations, and you're probably not very close to your customers anymore. And so
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that have been very unhappy as they've gotten farther up the ladder and realized I was making, if not more, very similar amount of money, and my work-life balance and general happiness was easier. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And sometimes it's a lateral move in terms of title, but it gets back to like, why are you leaving your current organization? What are your core drivers? I think a lot of times people get very reactive, and it's just we I think the word like toxic gets thrown around all the time. Oh, it's a
Yeah.
toxic environment here. I gotta go.
Yeah.
So again, like we can't just run from something to the next thing without
Mhm.
any thought process behind it, because you're going to find yourself in the exact same spot in 18 to 24 months because you made a hasty move either to a company that threw the most money at you because you're like, oh, wow, these offers all look the same. I'll take the highest one. But you know what? They maybe made you a higher offer because they're having turnover issues. It's a difficult environment. Maybe they're having trouble recruiting people. And so they realize they have to throw more money at it. There's all these reasons why we all do the things we do, but making sure that we've got some kind of decision-making process in place that's strategic is really important.
Yeah, yeah. I think it also, those conversations that you're talking about that you have with candidates and clients kind of goes back to the differentiating factor of recruiters that are in it for the money and recruiters that are in it for the whole experience and the whole thing that's provided. Because I'm sure there's a lot of times where you could not give that advice, place the person, right? But I'm sure a lot of people appreciate it and you're like, hey, maybe think about the linear move here or the lateral move because you might be happier.
There was an individual. I won't mention names. I doubt he's going to be listening to me talk any more than he already does. But
Yeah.
with VP job, my client lowballed him, frankly, and it was well below what he said he wanted. There was a big equity component to it, and he called me and goes, "I'm take the job," and I said, "Don't. Like, why would you take this job? This is everything you said you did not want to do." And anyway, he ended up taking the job. A year later, it didn't work out. It ended up being messy. But he has referred me to a ton of people because, he's like, you, there's a big price tag on my head. You had a huge incentive for me to take this job, and you told me not to do it, and I should have listened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you can do that when the placement's pretty great for VP and C-level executives,
Oh, it
right?
was a nice fee. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great fee. So I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome that people can trust you a little bit more to know that you're not just going to be driven by money. I'm not just trying to toot your own horn, but
Yeah.
I think it's a
I
good
mean,
thing for you to keep
believe me,
in
it's
mind.
not my favorite thing to do. I love it when it all makes sense and everything goes together. But like it's the last thing in the world we want to do is put someone in a job and have them leave in 12 months and then that candidate is resentful towards us or the company is like, hey, we didn't get value out of working with John because the person didn't stay. Yeah, I made a couple of bucks, but the long-term relationship is more important to me on both sides of that coin than any one transaction. The lifetime value of that customer is significantly higher than any one deal ever is going to be.
Yeah, especially if they leave in 12 months. I mean, as far as I understand, majority of the time, that's just all negative for the company. The
Oh
training
yeah,
is
no,
so
it's not
expensive.
good, and it
Yeah,
depends on the role and all the other stuff. But yeah,
right.
generally speaking, it is a giant pain for everybody.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting, and I've got one more question for you. I'm curious, looking ahead, what hiring trends do, or what do you expect to define renewable energy leadership over the next few years?
Oh, that's an interesting question. What will define renewable energy leadership? Um,
And it could be what we already talked about, so don't feel like you can't say the same
I
answer,
got
right?
to make up something
I
else.
know it's similar.
I think in renewable energy in particular, we are in an execution phase, right? I mean, we're kind of past the, hey, does this work? What new technology do we need? There are some new technologies coming out that are actually really interesting and some long duration energy storage stuff. But it's
Hmm.
really about how do we execute and drive down costs, right? You look at some of the load growth in the utility space, and not everybody listening to this will care about that, but we look at data center growth and all of the strain that this is going to put on our energy grid at the end of the day, whether it's solar and storage or people are talking about modular nuclear reactors and all this other new technology that I don't think is going to come as fast as people want it to.
Hmm.
Um, the individuals and the organizations that can go out, can execute, get steel in the ground, get products sold that are going to generate electrons to power our economy. That's what it's going to be about for the next couple of years. Is just experienced people or even if they're up and coming and not very experienced, strong people that care and can execute.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know everything about that industry, right? But I think it's really awesome for people to know that are in the industry because we have clients in that industry
Yeah.
that are candidates for you, right? And potential clients for you. But I appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious, people that are listening that are interested, they want to know more about what John's doing, what peak demand is doing.
Yeah.
What's the best way for them to follow along and learn more?
LinkedIn's probably the best place to find us. The company page has got a pretty good sized presence, so it shouldn't be too hard to find us.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if we can put it in the show notes, probably a link to my LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
Happy to
Yeah,
talk to
well,
anybody, reach out anytime. And we can't always be a perfect fit for everybody at that exact time, but
right.
happy to chat with anybody and see how if I can be of a resource on the journey.
Awesome. Thank you, John. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time, for being on the podcast, and hopefully we can have you on again.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah, likewise.